What is good, YouTube? We are back, episode 9, Sports Force, here on the Warzone Sports Network. I am Joe Scurto with Brian Bolstered, as always. It is NFL Draft Week, and that's basically all we're going to be talking about, despite a few mailbag questions. Brian, how amped up are you for this Thursday's draft?
I'm excited, man. It's tomorrow, and then we get it for 3 full days, and, we still have a day or so to talk about mock drafts. And, man, we got to talk about that Chris Sims mock.
Definitely. This is going to be the last episode, at least this season, that we're talking mock drafts. Then we could actually talk about the real thing. But Chris Sims mock draft is going to drive a lot of people nuts. We're going to have a lot of fun with it. Let's drop that intro first.
3, 2, 1. Get it back again. They made the rejection. One small step. One giant leap for mankind.
All right, so let's pull this up here. Chris Sims released his mock draft, and he had social media going wild. And the main thing was because he had Justin Fields dropping all the way to 32 to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, all the way to the Buccaneers, of course. You know, how convenient of that to happen. Brian, let me just get your initial reactions, and then we'll just kind of go back and forth, and we'll look down this list as we go on.
Yeah, no doubt. It was shocking. To me, that wasn't the biggest shock. I mean, 32 seems a bit low. But I do think we see a Justin Fields free fall. I've already kind of came out on the record and said I think he's going to be the 5th quarterback selected. And then you look at potentially even if the Denver Broncos take a quarterback, we're still talking about likely one quarterback still being on the board. And really all that's left is, are the Patriots going to take one? Is Washington going to take one? And I don't think either team would be shocking if they went with a quarterback, but I don't think it'd be surprising if they passed. And then that's where you could see a true free fall, not just, to 14th to 15th. So I think he's on to something there. But to me, the biggest shock was the Patriots trading up, but taking Jalen Waddle. Like, that's bizarre. There's no way that's happening, right? Like, they're going all in on Cam Newton. They brought in so much free agent talent, but they gave him a 1-year deal. Like, those things just don't quite add up.
I agree. That was definitely a shock there. And I also don't see Carolina trading all the way back to 19. I think they're going to at least want to get their hands on one of at least the top 3 to top 4 offensive linemen. That's kind of where the route I see them going in. Yeah, the Waddle thing is, I mean, I'm lost. I think you either stay at 15 or you trade up and get a quarterback. You're not going to trade up to get a wide receiver. I'm not really sure about what he's thinking there. And I just have to toss it out at Joe Tryon to the Jets. I mean, I personally, I've never heard of this guy. And I've been doing extensive research on this particular draft. I usually do in any draft, but never heard of him. Linebacker, I think out of Northwestern. Oh, I might even butchered that. I don't know why you go get a linebacker at 23. Not really sure about that. It's just all these trades too. I'm just looking at it. It really just hurts my head to look at it. But we have talked about in this show, especially when it comes to quarterbacks, Chris Sims is definitely on to something. He may not have been a reliable quarterback himself, but he knows how to evaluate these guys better than any of those other guys that we listen to who have probably never played the game before. Jeremiah is the only guy who's been a scout. What has Mel Kiper done? What has Todd McShay done? I mean, I don't think Mel Kiper has an athletic bone in his body. I read a thing that he eats pumpkin pie for breakfast every morning. That's what I read.
That's the breakfast of a psychopath.
Yeah.
That's what psychopaths
every
do.
single morning. Man, just eat some fruit or something. So I'm not going to listen to him.
That's hilarious. Pumpkin pie. My gosh, they should just pie him with one during the draft. But you're right. Chris Sims is on to something without a doubt. Love him or hate him. He's been doing it the best as far as scouting this quarterback position over the last 5 seasons or so. And he's got it. His rankings, again, are Zach Wilson 1 for you Jets fans out there. Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, Lance, and then actually he's got Kellen Mond 4th, then Lance, then Fields. So he's got Fields at 6. And I do think Fields is going to be the 5th quarterback selected. I don't think Mond will be selected over him. If he falls out of the first round, people are going to lose their minds. But Joe, I actually do think I can see the Panthers trading back, because the other kind of more subtle thing that I saw from this mock draft, and I've seen from a couple others now recently, is offensive linemen are starting to drop a little bit. Don't be shocked if Sewell ends up dropping a little bit, and it looks like Slater might too. I think everybody's looking at this class. There's no clear-cut elite tier, and they think the depth is good enough to wait. And I think you're seeing that play out in this mock draft for sure. And I think the Panthers are in a position where they might go in on defense again. That's what they did last year. I'm hoping they don't. But last year, every single selection was a defensive player. And they might find where, okay, that's the most value. Chris Sims has them taking Caleb Farley. Hopefully the man's back is healed. And then they can go offensive lineman and receiver most likely late in the draft. Those are the 2 positions that they keep saying there's the most depth in. So I don't think that's that crazy. My Titans selected Tevin Jenkins in this mock draft, which I like for sure.
No, I definitely get with the Panthers. I think they could trade back. I know we're actually gonna get to that with the Patriots, because I think potentially it's going to be those 2 to make a deal, maybe the Lions, but just going 8 to 19. I don't know. Maybe it's more so I don't see Washington moving up to draft a quarterback. I don't see them taking a quarterback. I think it's over with. You got Fitzpatrick. You extended Taylor Heineke. Maybe next year's the year you draft a quarterback. I think that's the year you go all in. And Trey Lance, yeah, that seems nice and it makes sense, I guess. Sit back with Fitzpatrick, but I don't technically see that happening. But again, I've seen worse mock drafts. I think the Justin Fields thing is the only reason why everyone lost their minds here. I really do. And the Jalen Waddle thing is suspect too. That doesn't make any sense. But we've seen this happen before with all these guys. And I'm going to throw it at Kuiper again. I mean, the Jets have a billion needs, and he had them trading back to draft Kyle Pitts. Of course, Kyle Pitts is this this insanely good, talented tight end or receiver, whatever you want to call him, but you're not going to go trade back and get a tight end when you have 1,000 needs. So that you could nitpick anyone. Justin Fields, definitely not 32nd, but you and I have been preaching. He's going to be the 5th quarterback on the board. He's going to. And I will say, I think he's not better than Zach Wilson. Stop. He's not better than Trevor Lawrence. Stop. I know people think he's a top 1 or 2. Go watch the film. His 440, we can just write that down on a piece of paper with a Crayola crayon. Okay, you could write that, because he doesn't play like 4.4 speed. Go watch him. He doesn't. He runs 4.6, 4.7 speed. You can't tell me that he looks like, this insanely good athlete. He's a great quarterback. I'm not saying that, but we just got to tone it down here. There's a reason why he's dropping. They're watching more film than the fans. The NFL, they're not as high. When Brian and I have said it before, the NFL is not nearly as high on Fields as the fans. And we're continuing to see that in every draft, because it seems like he keeps on dropping and dropping and dropping. There's definitely something we don't know. There has to be a reason behind it.
Yeah. Can we just, last thing, go ahead and put this narrative on blast? You hear it every single draft season. Well, at the start of the season or at the end of the college football season, Justin Fields was the consensus number 2 quarterback, which one I don't think is true. But this happens every draft. Why is he falling now? People always ask it. Well, why is somebody falling now? Or why is all of a sudden Zach Wilson rising up boards now? This is how the scouting progression goes. They don't finish things up when these players finish up their college seasons. If anything, they ramp it up even more. Right? Because they don't even know prior to the season who everybody is going to be actually declaring for the draft. So this happens both going up the boards and going down. Just in recent memory, Kyler Murray was one after the college football season ended and well into the March, was like, will he be a top 10 pick? Okay, now let's see. I think he's actually going to be picked 7th. I remember in mock drafts. And then all of a sudden, we're closing in on the draft. It looks like he might actually be the number 1 overall pick. It happens both ways. I'm just so tired of people always using that excuse. Like, well, what happened? People did their jobs. That's what happens. Players got analyzed. That's what happens.
Exactly. And look at Kyle Pitts. Now he's going to get drafted top 4. Can we say what happened? Did he just become suddenly great after the season ended? No, he's been great the whole time. It's a process. I mean, imagine having to scout all of these players from all these different schools. It is definitely a process. And we saw Justin Fields throw 6 touchdowns against Clemson, but they also saw him throw 3 interceptions against Northwestern. We just kind of canceled that out because he had a big game against Clemson. You have to nitpick everything. And that's why we haven't really heard about Zach Wilson until the end, because he played for BYU. But all these scouts are sitting there drooling over him. And half of the people are like, who is Zach Wilson? And now he's number 2. He's going to go number 2. So, yeah, they're doing their jobs. I don't think it's a matter of Justin Fields, like, what happened? Did he get worse, or why are they hating on him? There's just better players out there. That's really all it is. I'm not saying Mac Jones and Trey Lance are better quarterbacks, but it's all about the scheme fit. It's all about how a team can envision how this particular player can go in and fit with what they're trying to do. Maybe the fit isn't there. I don't think it's really a hate on Justin Fields. You just have to say, I guess we'll just have to see. Moving on here, as mentioned, New England, the Patriots are now kind of scouting out. They're trying to trade into the top 10, and no, they're not going to draft Jalen Waddle. They're going to draft potentially a quarterback, and the Panthers have been one of the teams that they've possibly been having negotiations with. And now Stephon Gilmore's name's getting thrown around. I'm personally not surprised. I think that's going to be the reason why the Patriots land that pick. They could sweeten the deal with Gilmore with the 15th overall selection. I think that's good enough to move up in the top 10, especially if it is a team like the Panthers who could definitely use a cornerback, and then they could go focus on the offensive side. Brian, do you actually think the Patriots are trading up, or is this just blowing smoke?
I think it's blowing smoke, to be quite honest. I know it's something that's been rumored forever, but I just don't see it actually happening. And again, in my opinion, they weren't just aggressive in free agency. They were a little bit desperate. Maybe they'll continue that trend in the draft, but we just don't see them do that. So I just don't quite buy them, trading up and Gilmore to 8, let's say, to get Lance, even though I think Lance probably should be the pick for New England because you do have Cam Newton there. Let him sit for a season. But I don't think it's going to happen. Although I will say for the Panthers, my second favorite team now, that's a pretty good situation. I think if you could get the 15th overall pick, Stephon Gilmore, for that 8th selection, maybe even something else like a conditional pick based on how many games he plays, something like that, that's pretty ideal, I think, for the Panthers at least. You can probably get your corner, and you can take a top tackle in the draft at that position.
Absolutely. I think any team would that would help any team, really, especially the Panthers, though, because they need that position. Of course, we talked about defense, and now you could kind of build that young secondary that they have with a nice veteran asset like Gilmore, and still take a good offensive line, because we already know there's tons of depth there. And I don't know. I think it's blown smoke too for the Patriots. I really, really do. And I think it's more so me just convincing myself that it is, because the last thing I want to see is Bill Belichick trade up and draft whether it's Justin Fields or Trey Lance, or probably not Mac Jones. I think he's gone, but one of those two guys. It has been a season that we're not used to seeing, but I think it's also due to the fact that it is panicking. I mean, look what the Patriots did. They had no plan after Brady left. It was like they didn't even know that was an option of Brady potentially leaving. They were stuck with Jarrett Stidham and Brian Hoyer. I mean, what? And then 80 days later, you go get Cam Newton, who was just thrown out, out of the building, like, see you later. We don't want you. We're going to take Teddy Bridgewater, who hasn't even started since he blew out his knee. He started 7 games for the Saints. So that told me something, that Belichick and Kraft, of course, they've done so great. And sometimes great things come to an end. And I feel like they panicked a little. They had to get Cam Newton. So maybe we do see a desperation move. I think they have to trade up. I don't know if they will. They absolutely have to, because what happens after Cam Newton? What is the point of spending $200 million?
Yeah, they don't have an answer. And what I feel like gets just completely glossed over is Cam Newton was not part of the plan.
No,
They were going into the season without him. Then we're like, okay, like you said, months later, okay, we'll just kind of take a flyer on him for the vet minimum. Like, he was not even part of the plan. So I don't know if they were thinking full tank mode or what they were doing, or if Bill Belichick really thought like quarterback doesn't even matter. Just some bizarre stuff. I mean, even this season, it is kind of bizarre again. Like, what is their plan really? They bring back Cam Newton on a 1-year deal. They spend the most money they ever have in free agency by a large margin. It just doesn't add up to me. It would make sense that they draft a quarterback, but I don't know. I mean, the Patriots' way has definitely changed without a doubt.
for sure. Yeah, they didn't have a plan. We didn't know what the plan is because they didn't have one. Even Bill Belichick didn't know what the hell his plan was. It really, I honestly don't know how that process went through, and it's crazy to see Brady leaves and everything just, I don't know. I mean, the Pats still won 7 games. That's what I think is kind of crazy. As bad as Cam Newton was, he threw only 8 more touchdowns than you and I did last year. As bad as he was, they still won 7 games. So maybe he is up to something. I have no idea. They have to trade up, but will they? That's the big question. But I don't think it's a big guarantee. I mean, I know a lot of Patriots fans, and they're already settling like, yep, we're going to get Fields. We're going to get Trey Lance. I mean, haven't you learned not to give your hopes up during the draft? Bill Belichick trades out of the first round 75% of the time. Would you be surprised if they just traded back and drafted a corner from Rutgers? I wouldn't.
Oh, 100%. That, I mean, yeah, that's just as likely in my mind that they trade back. Like, I just don't quite buy it that they're, going to move up and definitely take one of these quarterbacks. That's just not Bill Belichick's MO. I mean, I think they've got their eyes maybe on Jimmy G, to be quite honest with you. But don't get it twisted. Regardless of what the Patriots do in this draft, because over the last 7 drafts, they've drafted pretty dang horribly. They're going to win games. It doesn't matter. You talked about Cam Newton's performance. They still won 7 games. They were very competitive. They're going to be a good football team, regardless.
Yeah, they're going to win games. That's exactly why they loaded up, because maybe, just maybe, again, Belichick thinks, hey, if Cam Newton could even be average, we'll be good. We got a great defense now. We have a great offensive line. We have some weapons. We have arguably 2 of the top 5 tight ends in the league. So, yeah, the Pats will win games no matter who they got, just because they really loaded up that surrounding cast. Again, to take it to the next level, yeah, it's all about Cam Newton and the quarterback situation. But so let's talk number 3, Lance Mac Jones. That's what was been reported, that's who the 49ers are deciding. Justin Fields, he's not an option. And I think we knew that. We definitely did, especially how this show started. We both, general consensus, he's going to be the 5th quarterback off the board. And that's the way it's looking right now, especially that the 49ers have said Lance and Mac Jones, they're down to 2. They're not going to give anything away until they announce the pick. Brian, who do you think they're going with one last time?
They're going with Mac Jones, man. They're going with Mac Jones. We've known for months. I think they've tried to put up a smoke screen. I get them looking at Lance a little bit. That's kind of the swing for the fences pick. I think he would be a really good scheme fit there, but he's a project. And I think Kyle Shanahan is just done with Jimmy G. Not even for the play as much as just the injuries. And he's mentioned that. They cannot rely on Jimmy G to play. So because of that fact, they're going to go with the safer option, the more pro-ready option, at least as people see it now, with Mac Jones over Trey Lance. I don't buy into the Trey Lance thing at all for the 49ers, although I would love to see him go there. I think it's going to be Mac Jones. That seems like a Kyle Shanahan kind of quarterback.
I agree. I think it's Mac Jones too. I just don't see it any other way. I'm not surprised that Lance is in the mix. That makes sense. 1-year project. But now it seems like they're drafting their starting quarterback in 2021 with the 3rd overall pick. At first, you thought, oh, these guys are going to sit behind Garoppolo, but let's read a few crazy Kyle Shanahan quotes yesterday. I mean, I don't know if he purposely gave it away. He was kind of a total maniac. He said, we could have sat there at 12 and waited to see which one came to us. if one did, but we made a decision that we felt we needed to get a starting QB. Starting QB. We wanted to dictate it. We'll get one that we feel is best for us. And then he went on to say, after asked if Jimmy Garoppolo will be on their roster, I can't guarantee that anybody in the world will be alive on Sunday. That was his response. What in the world is that? By the way, Kyle Shanahan in games that he's coached without Jimmy Garoppolo is 7-26. So,
and it's pretty much the flip with Jimmy G, right? Like it's pretty much flipped. Like he's been awesome with Jimmy G. Yes. I think it's all injury. Like I don't think he, thinks Jimmy G's just a elite quarterback that he has to hang on to. I think it's pure injury. He's like, I can't keep having him get hurt and the season's just tanked. So I'm going to go and get somebody that I want. I want to hand pick somebody. When he was last basically in charge of an offense, he hasn't got to pick his quarterback, or he kind of did, honestly, in Washington. They forced the issue to get Kirk Cousins there. The Shanahans, they did not want RG3, did not want it. That was the owner's pick. They forced their hand and selected him in the third round, I believe. When you select a quarterback second overall and then another one in the third round, that's bizarre. And they did it for a reason. That's the same thing here. He's going to select Mac Jones. Mac Jones is like Kirk Cousins 2.0. I mean, maybe with sprinkles on top. Like maybe you can just buy into a little bit more, but hey, I don't blame Kyle Shanahan. He's been crowned by a lot of people as just a great coach in the league, maybe top 3. And some people are down on him because they're basically like, you haven't done anything without Jimmy G, which as a head coach is pretty true. But I think as an offensive mind, there's no debate. He's elite. And I think if he gets a competent quarterback that could just stay healthy, the 49ers are going to be a really good team.
For sure. And I think the thing that I've seen with Mac Jones too, it seems like the other guys around the front office are slightly towards Lance, but Shanahan's all Mac Jones. I don't know how true that is, but I do believe it because he replicates the style what Jimmy Garoppolo brought, and that's why he was so successful. He was a game manager. He's not a guy who's going to take a lot of risks. And a guy like Trey Lance, of course, you could say 0 interceptions, but a guy who typically plays like that uses his legs a lot. In the NFL, he's not going to have a lot of time. He was playing for North Dakota State. I mean, we always talk BYU, but North Dakota State isn't even a real Division I team. I mean, and they're by far.
They're Division I, Joe.
FBS,
they're Division I.
FBS,
the issue to me, though, and I think you'd probably agree with me, the bigger issue isn't the opponents and their level of play. It's that he was at the Alabama.
Yeah, right. That's what I was going to say.
So, yes. Okay, you're going against lower competition, but you're also kind of rolling in with that Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, where your team is also head and shoulders above every other team that you're playing. But hey, Trey Lance, he's a physical freak, man. I think he's a better athlete than Justin Fields. I'll go ahead and put that out there.
I think so too.
I think it makes sense. Just thinking, big picture, taking a step back, even from this specific situation with the 49ers, like the scouts are always going to lean towards the Lance type prospect where they see his ceiling. He's got all the physical tools, and the coach is going to lean towards like, what do I know? And the intellect that Steve Sarkisian has raved about, that sort of things. The known commodity. I've worked with this before. It's familiar for him. So I get that. We'll all find out if it's either going to be a home run and the 49ers are going to go to the playoffs several years in a row, if not further, or it's going to be a pretty big swing and a miss, and people won't let them forget about it. That's for sure.
No, they won't. And don't even be surprised if Lynch could lose his job over it in 5 to 6 years if they just suddenly become, dumpster fire. But I don't think that's going to happen. I think they got too much of a solid foundation around them. That is the spot that Mac Jones can go and thrive. It wouldn't be my pick. It really wouldn't, but I get it. It's the safe pick. You have the team around you and you're not desperate. You're not desperate like the other teams like the Jaguars or the Jets or even the Patriots. You're really not as desperate because you got everything else around you. And if Shanahan likes them, you should probably listen to him because he's the one who's calling the offense.
Yeah, I just got to put, this is going to be my statement on the record on Mac Jones to the 49ers. All right. fade the public. If you're a big Mac Jones hater right now, fade the public. That public is going way too far, saying Mac Jones is a total bum. There's no way he should be even a first-round pick. I'm telling you, fade the public. The public doesn't know squat. If Mac Jones goes to the 49ers, rookie of the year, book it.
Put that in writing. Brian Bolster right there. So we're going to close this out with the mailbag session. We got 3 questions. We'll start it off with Colin Anderson. What route do you see the Steelers going in the NFL draft? Najee Harris or an offensive lineman? What you thinking, Brian?
I'm thinking that they're going to go offensive lineman. I think this has been a steady franchise for a reason. They're going to wise up. I think they've got their eyes on Tevin Jenkins, an offensive tackle from Oklahoma State. I know Najee Harris is kind of the popular pick, and everybody thinks that the Steelers, their only issue is just running back, and that your running back creates the running game. But sadly, that's not true. Maybe it does for your fantasy team, but for real football, your running back does not just solve your running game issues. That's kind of like icing on the cake, but that's not the foundation at all. And in Chris Sims' mock, we talked about it at the top. He had them taking Landon Dickerson from Alabama interior. He's going to replace Mike Pouncey at the center position, which I know a lot of people are really high on his ability, his physical ability, one of the nastier offensive linemen, more physical offensive linemen in this draft. But my man's got major injury history. And at 24th, that seems pretty risky, at least in my opinion.
I was going to say offensive lineman, and Dickerson came to mind. The injuries definitely is concerning, but at that point you're replacing a guy like Pouncey. Maybe you go the upside to see if you can follow that with the Dickerson. If they go Najee Harris, they're crazy. We've been preaching this. Don't take a running back first round. Just don't do it. You have plenty of things going for you. You just lost arguably your best offensive lineman. I think it's an easy decision. It's O-line. Tevin Jenkins would be a great addition as well. Whoever they pick, as long as it's an O-lineman, it's going to be a great pick for Pittsburgh. Stay away. Stay away from the running backs. Go get one in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, or maybe even the 5th round.
I completely agree with you. Hey, a couple names to keep out for. Jalen Hawkins, late round running back out of Louisville. Small, bit undersized, but bringing the speed. And then you've got Puka out of Kansas. Very similar again. He's bringing some speed. These guys might go in the 6th round. That's where you should get your running back.
Agreed, because you're going to draft all these offensive linemen early. It's going to make a 6th round pick look a lot better. And we've seen a lot of teams thrive because they drafted running backs late. I wonder why. Because they were building the rest of their team to make their running backs' jobs a whole lot easier. We got another one. This is, I don't know. I'm going to butcher this. Brysonus. I don't know. It's probably way wrong. But who's the best scorer of all time in the NBA, Brian?
All right. So in my opinion, there can only be 3 that are even up for the debate. All right. So Karl Malone, get out of here. I don't want to hear that you're number 2 all time in points or something. It's Michael Jordan, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, and Wilt Chamberlain. Those are the only 3 answers, and at least in my opinion. And hey, okay, we can have a difference of opinion after that. But to me, that's got to be from those 3. And I'm going to go with Michael Jordan. He was absolutely elite while being a great defender at the same time. The points per game is really what kind of puts him over the edge. So I'm going Michael Jordan.
Yeah, I'll have to agree too. And I think you could give an honorable mention. I mean, nobody scored the ball like Kobe Bryant either, but he's not in that top 3 tier, just, based off of what these other guys have done. Michael Jordan, of course. I think Wilt Chamberlain is close though, because he just dominated everyone. I mean, yeah, he was playing with 5'11" centers, but that's not his fault. He was by far the best guy on the court at all times and was completely dominant. I mean, he scored 100 points. He scored 100 points. I don't care what year it was in. He still scored 100 points. But I'm going to give it to MJ due to he basically has every scoring record in the playoffs as well when it mattered, not to mention a lot of scoring titles to go just with his historic resume. So I think that's a pretty easy question. A lot of these questions, who's the what of all time in the NBA? It's most likely MJ. But we got Mike closing out the show. Chargers draft plans. I'll just say it quick. offensive lineman. Offensive lineman, offensive lineman, offensive lineman. If you trade back, I wouldn't mind them trading back or maybe trading up if Penny Sewell drops. I think that is your best bet. If Penny Sewell drops, even after the top 6, the Chargers should be aggressive and jump on that. Make Herbert even more happier because he's already vouched for him. It's almost a Burrow chase thing. Protect Herbert. Do whatever you can do that just protect him and let him play at the level he did last year. Let him repeat it. Don't let a sophomore slump happen. I like Sewell, offensive lineman all day, no matter who it is, if they don't trade up.
I agree that it should be offensive line. And I think they'll definitely address that throughout this draft. I just question if they're going to do that in the first round. They're kind of in a tweener pick for an offensive lineman. They would likely either get lucky and, you get one of the top 2 tackles that has slid, or you're kind of reaching up on somebody. So I could very easily see them going defense. They have a defensive head coach. We cannot forget that. These guys want to invest in their defense, and they've got a talented roster on the defensive side. I get that. People are going to bring up the big names like Joey Bosa. They drafted Kenneth Murray just last season, and they've always Derwin James. The man's a ghost. He's awesome during the summer. But then when it comes time for the fall, unfortunately, he's just been banged up every single year, it feels like. So I could see him kind of wanting to stake his claim. I'm a defensive head coach. The defense wasn't very good. They've got to fix that. Maybe Micah Parsons slides, or they reach up on one of the elite edge rushers. They've got a lot of money invested, in Joey Bosa, and he's got his own injury history. So I think they've got to add some depth at that position as well in the secondary. So don't be shocked if they don't go offensive line.
Okay. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if they went at defense as long as it's a guy who doesn't have injury history. That's about the last thing that the Chargers need, another defender who has all this raw abilities and potential, and then they're out by week 4. But I think the Chargers are in a good situation here. I really do, especially where they're picking at. I think they can kind of be creative. Or like I said, you could always trade up if something crazy happens. So, Mike, I'd be feeling good about your Chargers heading into the draft, whether they get a defender, like Brian said, or an offensive lineman to protect Herbert. Well, that's going to wrap it up here on Sports Force, episode 9 on the Warzone Sports Network. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Facebook, you name it. We got 4 shows a week, 3 live shows a week. It's happening, and I'm sure Sports Force will be very exciting next week, post-draft. Hope everyone enjoys the draft, and we'll see you next week.